Yeah, show that mug who's boss. Shalom, my fellow individuals. Rune is a hacking of the slashing game with a Viking flavor. I won't be covering the multiplayer for obvious reasons, but before I can really begin, I have to get some autism out of the way first. This game came out for Windows, Mac, and Linux. However, at the time of this video, the only one being sold digitally is the Windows version. If you're not using that, I hope you enjoy channeling black magic through wine. But wait, I'm not done yet. The version being advertised, the Classic Edition, removes levels from the game. You won't be getting the raw length and girth of the Rune experience. From what I gathered, if you buy the Classic Edition on Steam, you don't get the gold original version. So unless you, well, you know, the only place you can get the original copy legally is through GOG, because it comes with your purchase of the Classic Edition. But oy vey, both versions of the game have this bug where you can't adjust the in-game brightness and many areas are too dark. If you have the Gold Edition, you can download an OpenGL DLL, which will help a bit, but there will still be places that are too dark. For those areas, you have to go into the options menu and turn off world lighting. I'll be using the Gold Edition. But no matter which version you pick, it will all be worth it, because this is one of the greatest crouches I've ever seen in a game. Rune was also ported to the PS2. I don't know what will happen if you turn on turbo controls and crouch. That's an experiment you'll have to look into. If there's one thing you can't fault the game for, it's the visuals. Some of the stuff they did here is pretty neat. Your character's footprints show up in the snow, which is always cool to see. Their costume changes throughout the game too. I love the environment design. In fact, I'll argue that age has helped their fantastical element. I found myself navigating them mesmerized by the sights. Furthermore, the atmosphere and ambience is pretty good too. I've seen some people call Rune a sales pitch for the Unreal Engine due to how it likes to display its graphical capabilities. Of course, the quality of a game falls more on the developer than the engine, and I don't personally use Unreal, but it worked on me. I'm sold on it. I found the soundtrack in this game to be awesome, especially when the drums kick in. Just listen to it. You play as the Viking Ragnar in this game. When it comes to the controls, they're easy to pick up and play. Ragnar controls great in my opinion. He doesn't have a variable jump height, but he also doesn't take too long to climb up ledges either. There are 3 weapon types, swords, axes, and hammers. Each of them have multiple tiers with their own pros and cons. Furthermore, some weapons are better at defeating certain enemies than others. For example, I noticed hammers are really good at killing dwarves. From what I've seen, a lot of the weapons appear to have unique arcs for their attack animations. That's pretty neat. They could have just used 2 sets of animations, one for single-handed and another for two-handed weapons. But they did more than that. You've got a basic combo while standing still, as well as one for crouching. When holding a movement direction and attacking, most weapons will have an arc related to that direction. There's also a mid-air attack as well. Every weapon has a rune power, and not all of them are created equal. Some of them are much more useful than others. I think this one, for example, is much better in multiplayer. Then there's the Goblin Axe, giving you a ranged attack. Shields offer temporary defense. Think of them as armor you have to activate. When you have one, you can block. However, when using a two-handed weapon, Ragnar will drop the shield you currently have equipped, which is weird. In addition, you can't attack out of a block. You also can't feint or block out of an attack, which are fine for me. When you slaughter enough enemies, you'll enter Rage mode. While it's on, you basically have an extra temporary health bar. This happens automatically, you can't choose to save it for later. I wish you could activate it whenever you wanted, but I didn't find that to be too big of an issue. I think the combat feels good enough for what it is. Blood shows up on the weapons and you can cut off limbs and decapitate your enemies, which is pretty metal. Furthermore, you can throw your held weapons at enemies. At first, I underestimated how effective this was. Seriously, you can make the hardest enemies in this game easy by unloading everything Ragnar has in his pocket at them. At the end of the day, the combat isn't very deep, and I don't see anything wrong with that. It makes the game easy to pick up and play. However, I think it's fair to point out that if you enjoy games like Devil May Cry, Monster Hunter, and Arcana Heart, I don't think you'll enjoy Rune very much. On the other hand, with how much you're expected to engage with the combat, the game does not have a lot of meaningful enemy variety. You approach defeating many of the enemies here in the same way. Here's one you'll see around the start of the game. Now here's a guy around the middle, and finally one near the end. One of the more interesting foes is encountered towards the start of the game. Unless you decapitate them, they'll keep getting back up. They needed more stuff like that in the Dwarven mech. I do have another problem with the combat, but I'll get to that when talking about the level design. As for the AI, I think it's okay. When they see you, they want you to die. They're not going to be using advanced tactics or anything like that against you. One thing I love that the devs did was making the AI fight each other. It helps make the world feel alive. There's a criticism I've seen for this game that I want to address. I've seen people say that this game would be better if the AI was more intelligent. Would this game be better if the AI attacked you in formations and tried to dodge your attacks? Yeah, maybe. But a lot more work goes into making an opponent fun to fight than just making them smarter. Plus, game AI doesn't have to be smart, it has to look smart. Take a look at this boss fight in Castlevania Symphony of the Night. The stage design and what the enemy can do also plays a part in it. What about the actual level design? I found it to be a little all over the place. Look at this part with the falling boulders. They don't show a shadow before impact, but they do show a graphic when they hit the ground. I found it difficult to get through here, until I went through it looking up at the sky. Then it became easy. Was that intentional? There's this other part where you have to jump with the blowing wind. It's inconsistent. I didn't find the fight with the Dwarven King to be very enjoyable either. You have to activate these switches at the top of the stage while dodging the boss's ranged attack. Activate enough of them and you win. Awesome, but for every switch you have to head back down and enter a portal. I just thought it was hard to do this without getting hit. Me being incompetent might play a part in it. He does die pretty cool though, so it's worth it. And on the bright side, the game has a quick save feature, so you won't be punished too much for the more unfair or unforgiving sections. But then you get these areas that are pretty moist. Right at the start of the game, you'll be taught a very important lesson. You can find a shield, which shows you that if you explore and keep your eyes open, you'll be rewarded. In that same level with the wind, you get this area with a bridge of ice. If you jump on it, you'll notice it bend. Further along, you'll find a monster. You could choose to fight them, but you could also lure them to the bridge. Both decisions achieve the same outcome. Then there's this part where you get captured by goblins. They put you in a pit with a beast to die, and you have to figure out how to escape. My favorite section of the game has to be the parts with the city of Thorstad. You're weaving through buildings, heading towards a temple, while bringing the heat along the way. The enemies taunt you, giving them some personality too.
Your hair looks so soft.
I found the puzzles in this game to be a nice change from the combat sections. In this one, you have to lure the enemy to walk over a pressure plate so that you have enough time to get through a door. It's about time I addressed my other big problem with the combat. For the most part, it's not worth fighting the enemies in this game. Think about this, why do you kill an enemy? Maybe you're grinding for a resource you need, such as an item or experience points. You have to defeat them in order to advance, or it's simply removing a threat in your way. Well, you don't get much for fighting here. Yeah, you can get the weapon a defeated enemy was using, but you only have to kill one of them for that. A lot of the time, you can just run right past them. In fact, choosing to fight them when you don't have to is detrimental, because they tend to hit harder than my parents when I forget to make their coffee in the morning. They somewhat solve this further on in the game by forcing you to do more combat sequences in order to progress. I'm going to be honest, I found it difficult to come up with suggestions to make the player engage with the combat more that didn't involve redesigning major aspects of the game. For example, I thought of adding a leveling system, with defeated foes giving you experience points and having stats for items and equipment. You know, RPG mechanics. Maybe turn this into some sort of third-person Diablo clone. However, that has its own set of problems to deal with, and that could make the game harder to get into. In addition, I didn't want to add anything that could clash, like taking what's supposed to be a gritty war story and slapping cutesy dating sim mechanics on it. As a result, other than making more forced combat sequences, or something like killing an enemy for a key to unlock a door, I would have taken more platforming or puzzle solving sections. Alright, let's talk about the story. Konrak, the bad guy, kills Ragnar and a bunch of others. Ragnar then gets revived by Odin and seeks vengeance. And that's it, that's the plot. Remember, it's okay to go to bed before 12 a.m. I found the story to be rad and disappointing. What makes it rad is that you actually get to go through breaking out of hell, as well as going against the odds by fighting a powerful enemy. The whole game is great at making you feel like a powerhouse. But see these guys that show up at the start of the game? They practically never come up again. Furthermore, Ragnar's father is one of the characters that dies. And while I was playing through the game, they do mention the dad a few times. They say this, and that got me excited. I thought the devs were going to do something rad, like having Ragnar's dad take control of a demon, and you have to kill the demon to restore the father's humanity. And then Ragnar's dad will thank his son, and trust Ragnar to save the world. Well, no, they don't do that at all. Why bring up Ragnar's father at all if you're not going to do anything with it? Did they intend to do something with this, but not have the time or budget? Stuff like this is great from a gameplay perspective. The game gets rolling fast, and you don't have to worry about constantly being interrupted by cutscenes. However, from a writing standpoint, this is disappointing. These characters might mean something to Ragnar, but they don't mean anything to the player. You don't spend enough time with them for it to mean anything. Ragnar could have been a forgotten warrior in hell, chosen by Odin to save the world, and the game would practically be the same. The cutscenes are done in-engine, which is always cool to see. A weird thing is that some of them cannot be skipped. Right at the start of the game is a perfect example of this. You can skip the first cutscene, but you can't do it for the one where you fight another Viking. Ragnar doesn't talk, so we don't get any cool or cheesy one-liners. Based on your point of view, that might be great or horrible. That brings me to the voice acting. I thought the voice acting in this game wasn't bad.
Know that it is the All-Father himself who has saved you from certain death. You seek vengeance upon Konrak, and I have granted you this chance.
There is a strange presence in my realm. A living presence. Why, it's immortal.
Konrak doesn't have much going on beyond evil bad man. And that's okay because we have Loki. Loki is a highlight of the entire story. I'm sorry, but I have to play his full introductory scene. Anything less is a disservice to you and the performance.
Odin. One-eyed one! Have you come at last to set me free? Or have you come to gloat upon my twisted form? No, not Odin. He does not forgive. And neither do I, you misbegotten old wretch! I will destroy you, Father. just like Baldur. I will. Now, I am destroying you, old one-eye. There are so many you've discarded, forgotten. Me, my daughter, the souls you condemned to her realm, dishonored you called them, not worthy of your precious Valhalla. But they are great in number, and through my schemes and with my blood, they will rise to crush Asgard itself.
In my opinion, a missed opportunity was not having Ragnar meet more people throughout the game, especially since he's a silent protagonist. If you've seen Escape from New York, I'm suggesting something like that. Having Ragnar meet a colorful cast of characters that help him progress throughout the game. For example, while in hell, maybe he could save a lost Valkyrie or an angel from demons. She could then help him by destroying some kind of magical gate, or sacrifice herself so that Ragnar could escape. When out of hell, maybe he could then save a wizard or another Viking that helps him bypass some obstacles. The sections with these characters could also give the player more combat encounters. I also think it will help the journey feeling of the game, since the attractive demon lady that talks to you in hell never shows up again. New act, new friend. With all that said, I've seen a lot of people call the story in this game nothing special. I won't disagree with them, except for the last acts, because the game gets a little insane. It really took a turn I did not expect. Skip to here if you don't want it spoiled. 3, 2, 1... When you beat Konrak, the game goes revenge bad, transforming him into a super monster through Loki's special fluids. Then you jump into the liquid to become a super monster too. Loki then tells us that we should be his friend, because now Odin won't want to hang out with us and be our friend anymore. But you still have to chase Konrak, so then you jump good, run past every enemy you see, and turn off world lighting, because I can't find these things I have to climb. You make it back to Ragnar's hometown, just in time to meet Konrak trying to destroy the last rune stone. If he breaks it, Loki will get released, releasing Ragnarok upon Earth. This is where the game gives you the choice to get the good ending or the bad ending. But you don't want the bad ending because you want to prove you're a real hero. Konrak is fought like every other enemy in the game. He doesn't even get a gimmick. Odin then thanks you for everything you've done and welcomes you into Valhalla. What about all the other people that died, Odin? Except for the last act, the story isn't very special, and not why you would play this game. However, they put effort into it with cutscenes and voice acting. There are glimpses of something more going on, but what we got is what we got. I think Rune is decent. I wanted to play it for years and I finally got around to it. While the poorer sections didn't ruin the game for me, they did drag things down. And although I wasn't completely blown away, I'm glad I played it. Now, did games with better combat come out around the same time as Rune? Yeah, Devil May Cry and Severance Blade of Darkness. It might be a bit of a stretch because it has ranged combat, but Jedi Outcast hit the scene 2 years later. Depending on who you ask, that makes Rune look flat out obsolete in comparison. Are there straight up better games that got released around the same time? If we don't count genre, Deus Ex and Thief 2 The Metal Age came out the same year, and that's not even accounting for consoles. Does it come off as a commercial for the Unreal Engine? Probably. And you know what? If I were to replay this game, I'll definitely be abusing console commands to skip the parts I didn't enjoy. Then why play it? I'm making it seem as if this wasn't worth playing at its original release. Why give it the time of day? This game has heart. Maybe I'm giving the devs too much or too little credit, but if they didn't care, this game would be much shorter. The levels wouldn't be so big with a lot of secrets to find in them. They wouldn't have bothered programming the AI to fight each other. There would be less weapons in the game, and they would have used 2 animations for all of them. They even bothered to port the original game to Mac and Linux. Even at the time this video was made, you could tell people on those operating systems to get bent and still make bank with releases on Windows and consoles. And you know what? For all those sections I complained about, at least it was the devs trying to mix things up and keep the gameplay fresh. And we wouldn't have Loki. So look, I'm an autistic man-child on the internet. If you think Rune is worth playing, go ahead. If not, don't. I'd be happy to play a sequel that improved on this game's flaws. Oh hey, they did! Well, let's take a look at it. Oh. Oh no.